Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Kelley Tenney, founder and host of your Women Who AI Summit. We are having such an exciting day two, talking to all of these amazing AI female experts who are really doing a lot, not only to empower more women to using AI, but to really lead us in terms of AI integration and innovation. And in this session, we are here with Kaz O'Leary. Kaz, we are so excited to have you with us. I know you come from such a wealth of background, when it comes to technology and things like that. So thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And Kaz and I actually are in like a women in technology group, which is how we met, which is what I love. And she's like a couple miles from me. So I'm kind of like tripping out that like we're here on Zoom and this is the first place we've met, even though we live so close to one another. So I'm glad to have you as part of our third round of the Women Who AI Summit. And before we jump in, I just want to share with our audience a little bit about you. Kaz is a speaker, a founder, and a creative powerhouse. With a remarkable career spanning various industries, she's proven herself earning recognition as an esteemed mind with over 60 communication awards and previously being ranked number 2 most awarded creative in APAC. Adding to that, she co-founded a successful agency that was then acquired. She leaped into technology industry and was entrusted with leading emerging technology exploration teams and product strategy for Silicon Valley across half a decade, covering AI, AR, XR, and VR. So, Kaz, I know you're no stranger to the world of AI. Seeing that have that background in not only AI, but, augmented reality, virtual reality, and things like that. I know you're going to be able to give us a lot of different types of insight just into, I think, technology usage, right, in general, not just AI. But I would love to just hear a little bit about your journey and what it's been like to have, the journey that you've had in your career and be a female.
Hmm. I have been lucky to kind of take all the different seats that you just kind of quickly went through, and I think that has given me a really good perspective. So, started in advertising as a creative director, then moved those skills into the technology area, and I was kind of working out how that kind of merges across. And that was where I started to see a lot of the AR coming through and the XR. And then moving to the States was when we're really starting to see a whole lot of AI. But that cross section of experience and traveling around to the different markets made me really see where everything intersects, to your point, where at the moment we're in this incredible era of AI, but there's also this intersection with how that infuses into all the other pieces of technology. So
Mhm.
that journey has allowed me to constantly think of all those pieces at the same time, which I'm really grateful for. And I've been extremely lucky in my journey. I've been surrounded by other incredible females who have mentored me, taken me under their wing as I moved countries twice, extremely far away from home. So the female in technology, I feel very blessed for the journey that I've had.
Now, you mentioned an interesting point, right? Which is recognizing that you've noticed these trends. You've kind of been in this world of technology, and then you started seeing like the rising of AI and XR and things like that. And I would love for you to speak a little bit more about that because I think a lot of women who are watching the summit, everyone's here for a reason, and that reason is to learn more about AI, to be innovators, right? Lean more into the world of AI, not only to leverage what they can do for their business, but as women, we have 100 plates that are spinning. And, how can we just continue to use tools that will allow us to work more efficiently and more productively? And I know in this conversation of AI today, a big part of that conversation focuses on a tool, right? Like, Chat GPT. And obviously there's a lot of tools rising in the fire with all of this. But I think a lot of conversations, especially as more and more AI experts, if you will, kind of like rise in the industry, there's so much conversation around AI as a thing.
Hmm.
And I would love if you could give us some insight in terms of helping us shift to recognize that, and there's a broader scale out there other than just AI, which is what a lot of people are focusing on right now.
Yeah, and it comes down to if you are a startup in AI as a female founder, you probably already have a very clear idea about the thing that you want to create to bring into the world. But it's also taking that step back because, to your point, AI is one part of that. But what are the other touch points that could truly bring this idea to life? Like, we have so much as far as visual experience and getting in touch with all the senses. So there is so much at our disposal. The sandbox is like the biggest it's ever been. So you're right. There's such a huge focus on AI right now because there's so many incredible things to play with. But how do you take that step back and truly understand, are there two other pieces of technology that can come in and intersect to make your idea even resonate more with the audience in the way that it flows in their daily life? There may be something that is LLM, but there could be other things that are more visual. Like, do you want to, what is the, how would this translate into augmented reality? And then we're seeing these wonderful crossovers at the moment with things like an NPC. How do you bring in an LL? I feel like there's so many acronyms. I just see it stop because it's embarrassing. A non-player character. How do you bring in a large language model to really add that further? And so those two things combined, and then what's that experience in VR? So there
Mhm.
are just so much to play with, and AI itself at the moment is such a gift with what it can do to save time and add value to lives. But yeah, I just really encourage taking a breath and pausing to understand the full sandbox to bring the powerful innovation to life.
I love that, and the reason why I bring that up is because this is our 3rd Women Who AI Summit. The first summit was actually launched last April, so it's almost been a year, and the reason behind it was because, and I think I shared with you off camera, how there were a number of us at a generative AI conference. It was actually on Valentine's Day last year, and we are in a sea of, of males, and there were just a handful of females there. And so that conversation is kind of what led us to, here we are today. But what I'm recognizing from that first summit that launched over almost a year ago, it was all about, there was a lot of focus on prompts, right? We were
Mhm.
still in that stage with, with ChatGPT and other AI tools where we really needed to give it a prompt. People were sharing prompts, and it was kind of like plug in your variable. And we were all very focused on like that prompt master, right? The prompt stacking. And then now fast forward to a year, there are still people that are using prompts, obviously, and there's a place for prompts in the world of AI, but AI has evolved so much that most of us don't need an actual prompt to be able to get a result that we're looking for, because we're able to interact with it on a deeper level. We can be more conversational, more of like that brainstorming back and forth, instead of actually needing to worry about like, what is the prompt that's going to craft that result? So the question, I ask this question because I recognize as we evolve, as people who are using AI, trying to integrate it, and trying to be innovative with it, the next level of mastery is going to be moving towards what you're talking about, right? Like as AI evolves, integration of AI isn't going to just be like, how do I integrate inside my business and my workflows? But is
Mhm.
it possibly going to be, how do I integrate AI with all the other things so that the results are that much more powerful? And, we can really not just harness AI as a tool, but be more confident in using AI as a part of all the technology that we have at our fingertips to really elevate the results and the things that we're producing.
Mhm.
With that, though, I know some of the concerns, especially for some of our viewers who might be just starting to use AI, right? Maybe they've been kind of just listening and they're really like, okay, now I'm ready. Obviously, things like safe uses, security, ethical integration, those are all part of the conversation that I think ends up happening, right? When we, as a side effect of using AI. And it's certainly something that I know not only a lot of women are concerned with, but I know that's something that we speak to a lot as part of this summit, is making sure that everybody that we have on, that, everything that we're encouraging women to do is within like a safe and ethical
Mhm.
practice, if you will. So can you speak a little bit to, one, some of the ethical considerations that you think are key, for people who are looking to be more innovative with AI.
Yeah, and I talk a bit about this because it's right now with the technology moving so fast. This is so important, and I kind of put it I frame it as the well-being of innovation, and taking this again, to step back and let's say, for example, you're mapping out your timeline. Okay, your timeline of innovation. It may be for the startup of your company. It may be for a product that is within the company that you are about to progress with. Now, the way that we used to make timelines has just completely changed because the technology is different. So parts of the timeline are sped up, but there are some parts of the timeline in a traditional innovation timeline that you must protect. Please. And so when I advise, we go through that and we look at certain parts. But at the beginning, when you're mapping out your timeline, it's okay if you don't understand all the nuances of the different pieces of technology that are going in there. But it is on you to reach out and get input and seek counsel to truly understand what time needs to be allowed to build the different parts. What are the different tests and checks and ethics questions that we should be asking, and put them into your timeline right from the beginning? Because the strange thing happens is, as we're humans, once a timeline is made, we tend to go, well, that's the timeline. We've got to like stick to that, and we tend to rush and cut corners, and really vital areas start to erode. And with AI, I just feel it is important more than ever. I've seen it a lot of times with the testing in the testing phase at the end, which is so important because you're going to work out if it's working and how it's running and where the wobbles are and what you need to improve before you push it out to the world. A lot of timelines, they're going to hit, it's new technology, allow for road bumps. You're going to hit these, but protect the space that you have allowed for testing and for UX, and to make sure it's working how you want. I've seen that get eroded smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until people just want to push the button because they're exhausted, because they've been sprinting for so long and they just want to get over that finish line. And I think that's that's one of the most dangerous parts. Take a breath, have some sleep, give it the overnight test, come back, but protect that testing phase. So important.
I think that is really key when we're talking about testing, because there's a couple things that I feel like can happen, especially for people who are really starting to explore how they can use AI, right? One of the things is that there's a lot of experts out there. And I think one of the things we try to protect, as I shared with the Women Who AI Summit, is making sure that we give our community experts that are true experts, right? And because, in a world that's fast moving, I think for the good part, anybody who feels like they started using ChatGPT on day one is all of a sudden an expert, right? And certainly many of them are, but I think it's safe to say that many may not be. And so one of the things that we try to do is make sure that we have this community of women leaders that can be trusted experts. But when it comes to listening to the experts, I think there's this idea that, for example, Kaz is an expert. She taught us how to do the thing. And because I trust her as an expert, I don't need to go through that testing phase. I'm going to assume that Kaz has already tested it. And so I'm just going to go and mimic and duplicate what she's doing. Right? Can you
Mhm.
share a little bit about that, why situations like that may still need to require us having our own timeline of testing?
You need to always prepare for technology to fail. Always. And that is one danger that I'm seeing a lot with generative AI, because people are making it a set and forget. And we've already seen the errors that will happen. Like, you need to know how long can it run before it really starts to wobble, and it needs a human override because it's not considering the consequences of longevity or where it's going. So more now than ever, you need to plan for the technology to fail, and make that a part of your timeline. What are the questions that we should be asking? And the other huge piece about, um, we need to move past the romance of being first and launching and this honeymoon period of like, we're out, we've launched. And
Mhm.
that's not new. I come from an advertising background, and we could have that feeling that too. And we launch a TV commercial, we launch a big idea, and we're so tired. We're like, okay, we've done the thing is out there. But the key part now is the maintenance and the monitoring and hand on heart, the longevity and the legacy of the innovation that you're creating. So by all means, getting to the finish line is one part of it, but it's not over, especially with AI.
Mhm. Yeah. That's such a great point too, because, I know on just in this summit alone, we've had a lot of demonstrations that are happening with different AI solutions, a couple demonstrations of prompts and workflows that people have been sharing. And one of the conversations that's been coming up is recognizing that you and I could both open GPT-4. We could run through the same prompt and we might get completely different results, right?
Mm,
And not just in terms of like quality and accuracy, but even what I notice is like sometimes the format is completely different, where we might say, like, oh, wow, it's giving you this information. It kind of took this twist to it, but it didn't go there with me, right? And so there's still a lot of inconsistencies, I think, that we're seeing.
mm.
What would you say, if there's someone out there that's asking like, how do I know? Like, how would I know if it needs more testing? How do I know if there might be an inconsistency? Are there any like top like red flags that you might say, could be easy to spot for someone who's just kind of diving in?
It really is that testing phase and running it to see where it starts to go off path.
Mm.
That is key. You need to know that you're creating. This is your baby, and you're creating it. So that phase of testing it, running it, and pushing it to the maximum to see where it's going off, and then when you are feeling comfortable that when it does veer off, you know how to create an override and to consistently put in maintenance milestones. Like, there's a few ways you could do this, right? To your point about two people asking the same questions and getting a different answer. So building in multiple questionnaires into it as and getting group people as their specific crowdsource that you can use to be testing it at certain timelines once you've launched to immediately see where the red flags are would be great. Are there amazing nonprofits that could benefit from what you've created that you could also use to help audit and test as you're going? Like, there are some amazing ways that you can build in not only protecting the test phase before going to launch, but it needs to be continuously all the way along
Mm.
with large groups of people that are going to help spot, because yeah, we're getting different responses the whole time. So we need to know how to deal with that, considering it's what we're putting into the world.
And we see, something I see a lot of is I'll see posts from people using AI and they'll ask the question, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or whatever generative AI they're using. I see a lot of like, ChatGPT is broken, right? Like Claude's broken. And really, I think that term that they're using means it's not generating the results that it will typically generate. So when people are thinking that, these AI tools are broken, can you explain from like the technology standpoint of like what actually is happening? Because, they're not breaking down per se, right? They're probably just, like you said, they've either gone off a little bit or there's some kind of glitch that's happening. But what can you maybe like diffuse what's really happening in the world when people think that these tools are broken at the moment?
Yeah, well, we have hallucinations, which
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about, and the key way to, I mean, it's going to pull from the information that it has to keep giving back what you want. So when the testing phase again is so important, because it will only go to a point without being recorrected or being put back onto the right path. And it's not, if it hasn't been prompted for, a key thing I always say is when you're doing your prompts, also put in there things for it not to do.
Mm.
And that's really important. And an amazing friend of mine, Stephen, taught me this right at the beginning. And he said to me, there's so many people who are creating prompts about what do you want it to do, but not putting in what we don't want it to do. And I think that's super important as well, as far as talking about where it starts veering off, because you can get ahead of that. Don't respond like this. If this comes up, I'm going to respond like this. So I think that is a wonderful way of really stopping that happening as well.
I love that that's what you said, because there's been a couple like comparisons along the way to like act like ChatGPT as an intern, like what you would teach an intern could be a good, parallel to how you might be working with ChatGPT. And I saw somebody else say the other day, like, it's a baby, right? So how would you, teach a baby to like, don't put that in your mouth, or like, here's how you walk or crawl, or, here's how you hold a spoon, right? Like really recognizing. I think we forget that because AI is so probably beyond most of our general knowledge, that we're so like, maybe a lot of people are just so in awe with what it can do that we forget that there's still somewhat of like a very new stage of things that it needs to be taught. And, what you're talking about reminds me of like how like interactions I've had with my own children,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, why didn't you do this? Or why did you think that that was okay? And they're like, well, you didn't tell me not to.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
I
like,
have no other reference point.
yeah, yeah. So even though we're like, well, I told you to A, B, and C, and we're logically thinking, well, of course that means not to do D,
Yeah.
for children, they're like, but you didn't tell me that specifically, right? And so I think that's really helpful when it comes to those constraints that you build, if you will, or maybe I should say more of like the container that we build to use ChatGPT is we focus so much on giving it background information, telling it what it needs to know, what we want it to do. We
Mm.
forget potentially that there might be things where we tell it like, do not do this from the very beginning. So
Yeah.
I that's really helpful because I don't hear a lot about that point of telling it what we don't want it to do.
But also, if you use that as a discipline right from the beginning, it shifts the way that you think about the responsibility of what you're creating as well. Because yeah, it's so lovely to write all the things that you want it to do. Blah 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 blah. This is so amazing. But when you have to sit down and be like, okay, what don't I want it to do? You're like, oh, I hadn't thought about, yeah, the seriousness of what I'm creating and what I am putting out to the world. And these are definitely the things that I don't want it to do. So it's a really healthy and responsible thing to do, put innovation right at the start.
Mhm. And, you kind of are touching upon this, but one of the things that comes to mind for me is, are there certain things that we want to make sure we are telling it not to do? And I know everybody's use case, it probably varies, but just like in a general sense, are there some things that users should be thinking about making sure that we are telling it not to do certain things?
Obviously, one of the most important things are what are your rules around diversity, inclusion, bias that you know is related to your particular area that you're aware of, or research what a bias already exists in that field or that innovation, and you can then get ahead and make those as your list of a list of don't. Obviously, all the basics on don't the language that needs to happen, not to create anything that is harmful, that is going to teach people to build something that is illegal.
Mm, mhm,
It means that, it's the last thing that you want. You pour your heart into something that you truly think has got human value. And there are a lot of very smart people out there who know how to flip that.
mhm, mhm.
And as a company that's launching, that could possibly be the worst. We've seen it a lot with ChatGPT, where journalists can immediately jump in and find out where the wobbles are. And that's exactly what will happen because as humans, we're curious to see how we break it.
Right.
So, it's what we love to do. It's entertaining. And so people will always do that. So putting it through the stress test is if someone wanted to break this, what could they possibly use it for that could be bad?
Mm, mhm.
And again, such an important question to ask right at the beginning because we get caught up in the romance of our own innovation. And there are always people out there who are like, how will I break it?
And I feel like now that we're at this point where it's not just people interacting with ChatGPT, right? Now we have custom GPTs. People have the capability to actually start creating their own custom GPT, right? Now it's at the point where they're shareable, where people can sell it. And so now we're just on this whole other level of moving from I'm in my little bubble of using my chat GPT on my computer to do my things to like now I've built something and I have the capability to completely put it out there into the world, whether it's free or paid. And I definitely, in the back of my mind, wonder who's behind them, who is creating them. Anybody who's created a custom GPT knows that on the backside, there are instructions, right, that it's been given. And so, what are the instructions that it's been given? Has the instructions been created in a way that protects the user that's using it? Are the instructions telling it to lead the user in a direction that might be harmful or wrong, right? Like, what do
Yeah.
you think are some of those implications of people getting back there and starting to just kind of off the cuff create their own custom GPTs?
Oof, you touched on such a good point because again, we're rolling with the excitement of what it can provide. But yeah, stopping to think who has made this, who are the what was their vision, what is their goal is so important.
Mhm.
It makes me think, should there be, I suppose, if you want to be an ethical company, what type of transparency you put with the wording that comes out with what you're launching, could be key. I mean, there's a reason why I think Anthropic really excites me and I love that company because one, transparency, I know that they're built as an AI safety research and ethics company already. So I have that trust. And
Mhm.
I know that they all the things that they've published behind the creating of Claude, tied into human rights. And I know they've done the hard work and they took the time to do that. You raised such a good question about what should be public facing on how the thing was made. Just like when you pick up a can of soup
Right.
and market and you can see, they're all under legal obligations now, which is this is the full list of ingredients. This is the expiry date. Good luck and stick to a 2000 point calorie. Maybe we should be thinking a little bit more about what is the outward facing label, how long this took to create the test that it went through. It being aligned on its vision for human care. I think you're touching on is there some type of process that something can go through to get an approval stamp is
Mhm.
really interesting. Yeah. So you know that it's a safe piece of innovation to be feeding into and growing.
And I certainly am seeing that. Like, I don't think that's too far in our future. I know there's a lot of call for committees, organizations that are really about like the safe usage, the ethics around it. And certainly it started off as a conversation, but I definitely am starting to see maybe some formation of groups or groups of people, companies that are standing for that. And so I really think that hopefully we're moving towards that point. And I just love your comparison of like a food label, right? Like we don't, that's something there's been a lot of work towards laws around so that there is that transparency. And I think that's certainly someplace where we hopefully will be moving in terms of AI, especially when we're moving so quickly and there's so many tools that are coming out with different capabilities. So, for anybody who's been watching this session and who is really like just feels that inspiration and that aspiration to just enter the world of AI and to really start thinking about, how can I use it, within whether it's within my own business or my own life or I want to take a bigger role when it comes to, the AI world and in the arena that we're in. What kind of advice can you give them?
There's two ways to approach this. One, I do a lot of talk of well-being of innovation and the people who are working on it. And so for the people who are working on it, I don't want you burning out because you're at the cusp of creating some of the most important things right now. And I lie awake at night thinking of some of the people who may be burning out who are also creating some of the most important technology. And it gives me a little bit of a shiver. Using all the tools to look after yourself. I mean, things like Otter AI, which I use for every meeting. Like, how can you streamline your life to get some time back so you can rest and be nourished and show up and make some of the most incredible ideas in the world? Well, that's one side of it. The other side of it is if you are creating something what is go in with your passion. Like, what is an area that you are so passionate about that you can see it a solution is needed, and dive in and work out how AI can do that in an incredible way. We all have such depth of interests in different areas, and we see completely different things, and we need as many females in the industry as we can. So I encourage you all to jump in there because the tools are available. Like been talking about with ChatGPT, I mean, you can be creating and prototyping on the fly and testing and bouncing off amazing communities like you've created.
I love that, and I love that you brought up that point about burnout because I know that you've shared, and you've recognized that females are burning out faster than males, right? I think you've shared that you've had a couple of stages where you've gone, to that level of where you're burnt out, and
Yeah.
so you do a lot not only with AI, right? But you always speak to that recognition around preventing that burnout and really being mindful of your wellness. So what are some things that you've done in terms of, that combination of, AI being in a fast-paced world where, like you said, it's always about sprinting to the final product and figuring out how to still take care of yourself?
Yeah. Whew, the $1,000,000 question.
Yes, yes.
It's it's frightening because burnout is the highest it's ever been. And you would think that with all the technology we have, we would be getting better. And we're just not. So I do a lot of work in the space to try and work out with all the technology, things are moving so fast, but we need to claim some of that time back, especially with AI. I will often think in my brain, I would love to have a way that's capturing AI is saving me all this time. Amazing. But what am I doing with that? Am I just filling it with faster, more? Or can I set myself a little rule where I'm like, hey, I saved this many hours with AI this week. I'm going to make sure that I protect this bit here to be with my friends and family, to look after myself. I think there's something in there I want to work out as far as a personal measurement thing. But things that I do is I have to have some non-negotiables in my life for structure because I get so excited about working and innovating and creating. I get addicted to the adrenaline of new, right? So I have to put these things in. And so I have non-negotiable, which is I can't work late at night. It's just the worst thing for my brain. I'm an early riser. If I'm working late at night, it's the fastest way for burnout for me. And I know that from past experience. I'm in bed by 9 p.m. I'm a complete nana. But I'm awake at 5 a.m. And that's how I know how to run my life in one area. And the non-negotiables are I have to be exercising because it's the only way that I can release and get my body in line, and obviously looking after my nutrition. But the other key things are looking after the people around us as well. So whoever's on that project with me, I do things to truly understand how they work and they understand how I work. So let's say I'm in a team. I'm an early riser. My brain is the best between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. That's when I can churn through really big problems and get the work done that needs to be done. Now, I might be working with someone who's a night owl and their process is entirely different. They can manage and do all the work that needs to be done at night. So I need to know that, and they need to know that about me. So there are really basic things within team health and team well-being to know what's going on so that we're not all burning each other out. And just start with the basics. When I create a timeline, I get everyone to take a huge step back and truly look at it because it's all these little squares and days and months like squished, right? But take a huge step back and just do one test. Do you truly believe on the timeline that you've created that everyone can get home for dinner on time in that timeline? One question. And it really does make you look at things like where can we find some more space for people? Because it feels like the most basic ask. But if we truly believe that we're not going to be able to get people to the dinner table on time, then we're doing something wrong and we can amend it right at the start.
I love that, and it's so true. I think especially for women is that that's very much our nature is it's not I just saved an hour and a half, so I'm gonna go relax or read a book or maybe just have some quiet time. It's I saved an hour and a half, so what more can I do to be even more productive with that hour and a half? And so we're really not, it's very like us to not put ourselves first. So all of those are such just great reminders. So thank you for that, and thank you for leaving us with that, because again, I think it's like, what good is leveraging all of these tools if we're just trying to do more and we end up getting more burnt out or sick, right? Or something like that. So I appreciate that message, and I appreciate you being on with us. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your time. And I know that, so many of our participants are going to find not only this conversation around, ethical uses and, just proceeding with caution, but more importantly, recognizing that, we are not machines, right? Like we have our own needs and those need to come into play too, especially when we're figuring out how can we be
Mm.
more efficient and more effective in how we work. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And thank you, everybody, for watching this session full of goodness and just such important conversation that I think needs to be had, especially when we're talking about mostly female led and female joined community. And we will see you inside the next session. Take care, everyone.